Hey, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Jin.
And I'm your other host, Shane Carvalho.
We've been asking during past episodes, hey, give us feedback for topics that you guys want to hear about. And you've answered the call. We had a listener that reached out to Shane and had asked for us to talk about, what are some of the top habits that successful real estate agents do to help increase their production? And so we're going to talk about that today. And I want to enhance that topic a little bit by also talking about what are some ways to break bad habits and also instill in yourself better habits to help your business.
Obviously, there's so many ways to tackle this. And I just thought that, maybe you and I could share kind of the things that work for us and what we've done. Clearly there's a lot of people out there with, their own styles. And, I think kicking it off, I feel like, and I know this will come up a lot, but, consistency. Like I think almost everything we're going to talk about, consistency is going to fall in. And, and I think that, one of the first things that I would bring up is, you have to, in order to be consistent, you got to at least be interested or like it. Right. So
Yep.
like, because sometimes you hear like, oh yeah, this guy is knocking on doors and he's doing so well, or this person's calling expires and they're doing so well. It's like, you get all excited because somebody else is excited, but at the end of the day, if it's not your speed, if it's not something you can get comfortable with, or maybe you just suck at something where you're better at something else. I mean,
Yep.
really, you have to like it, and then
Yep.
you have to commit to
Yep.
doing it enough to having putting in the reps.
Yep.
And so, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I absolutely agree. And I think it all starts off with like, we talk about this in other episodes. I think you really have to know like what it is you're going after, like what motivates and drives you, like what are your long-term goals, right? But then on top of that, it really is a little bit of, or not a little bit, a lot of, you know, do you really understand like what drives you personally? And to your point, like, like if your goal is to increase your real estate production, and I think most of ours are, right? We have certain like goals that we set for ourselves. But like, for example, me, I'm introverted. I'm not gonna go door knock. It's not me. Like I know it's not me. Like I don't like talking to strangers that much. And especially like the thought of like knocking on doors just like gives me like the shivers. So like that's not an avenue that I'm going to go pursue when it comes to thinking about how do I go after my goals, right? I'm going to have to figure out something else based on who I know that I am and what I bring to the table. And I mean, for you, like you probably have you probably would have a very different approach than I would because, we all know you're much more extroverted than I am.
Well, yeah, no, I'm more extroverted, but I don't like door knocking either, and I don't like cold calling. Like I don't. I like to talk to people that want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to people that want to talk to me. I
Yeah.
don't get a door slammed in my face. And but another thing along those lines though too is that time, right? Because if we're talking about fundamentals on how to be more productive or what works for us, I mean there's the consistency factor, but then there's, like, I was talking to an agent today on a one-on-one, and I was talking about conversion rate and prospecting, and then the time, right? So if you're doing something with a very low conversion rate, it's going to take a lot of time to get the result. And so what I was telling him was that I always work from the inside out, and I know people are probably tired of hearing me talk about sphere database, but it's like the people that I already that already know and trust me, that I've done business with, and people that they know that they refer me to, like, I mean, that's where I live like 90% of the time. Like everything starts there. I'll sprinkle in calling on maybe an expired or canceled here and there. That makes sense, something I'm interested in. I'll meet some people through open houses, or just there'll be other ways. I'll get calls, like signed calls, or someone calls off the internet. I mean, I'm always open to talk to people, but I want to talk to people that want to talk to me. Like I'm
Yep.
not someone that wants to force the issue. And
Yep.
so for me, like, making best use of my time is going to be where I know I'm going to get results. I think, like, just to throw this out there before I pass it back to you, is that, I've had somebody tell me, "Oh yeah, I don't care. I'll cold call. I'm going to just grab the phone book." It's like all I want to say about that is that I could probably talk to 10, 15 people I know and probably get a lead, someone who's interested in doing something in real estate. If I had to go through a phone book, can you imagine like people that don't want to buy a house, people that are just renters, people that have horrible credit and always want to be renters, people that already own their house and are retired or not thinking about doing anything? I mean, it's like, do you realize how many people you need to go through just to even get to somebody who might even have something to buy or sell? And so that's where time becomes a huge problem.
No, it absolutely is, and I think when you talk about time, I think it goes back then to it goes back to goals, right? And so if I were to like break this, here I am again being an engineer. If I were to break this down in terms of how I would personally think about it, like for me, I would think about, okay, so what is really what is my long term motivation? And I think a lot of people, who are working and who work hard, like the ultimate goal is some form of like some form of like just financial freedom, right? It's not necessarily making a shit ton of money. It's I want to have the freedom, the time freedom, the money freedom to be able to go and enjoy the things that I'm really passionate about, whether it's spending time with family, or exploring the world, or whatever it might be. I think it's important to kind of ask yourself, what are the things that I'm really passionate about that I'm going after. And I know, like, you and I know a lot of successful people in our sphere. We're working our way towards that goal as well. And one common theme I see among a lot of these people is, they have some sort of like very long term vision for what they want to accomplish. And a lot of people like have vision boards. Like I'm kind of in the middle of like refreshing mine in terms of what I want, right? And have something that you visually can look at in your room in front of you that reminds you of, okay, this is what's important for me and this is ultimately what I'm working towards, right? And then once you kind of have that vision, then really lay out for yourself, okay, so what do I need to do? Oh, like I would lay out then what are my long-term goals, like my 1 year, my 3 year, my 5 year, my 10 year goals to try to accomplish that vision. And then within the 1 year, then I would get even more granular and start breaking it down into a more detailed level of, okay, so let's say my 1 year goal is I want to do $100 million in real estate production. Okay. So what do I have to do in 3 months? What do I have to do in 6 months? What do I have to do in 9 months? What do I have to do in a year to be able to accomplish that? And then to your point, then you get very tactical, right?
Right.
Like for 3 months, like I know, like if I want listings and I want production right away, I'm probably not going to be going and cold calling. I'm probably not going to be going and knocking on doors because the conversion rate for that is horrible, right? But to what your point is, what am I going to do? I'm going to like freaking announce to everyone in my circle, in my sphere, that hey, I'm a real estate agent. I'm probably going to look into making some type of like newsletter. I'm probably going to be looking to join like local community clubs. Like you just got a listing because one of the agents on a deal, like she found clients at her Rotary Club, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like in the short term, I would be tapping into my personal sphere, right? But then what about the 6, 9, 12 months? Like I don't want to lose sight of that. So for me, it's like, okay, I mean, for me, then it would be like, okay, then let me make sure that I'm still making the time to do the things I need to do on social media, which to me is like long term free marketing, and that's getting my brand out there, knowing that I may not be setting myself up for immediate success in like the 3 to 6 month time frame, but who knows who's out there watching. I'm building a following, I'm building my brand that's going to benefit me like 9, 12, 15, 24 months down the road.
Right. Well, that's one of the things you're doing. But, going back to what you're saying, it sounds like you're reverse engineering from your goals. And so, obviously because you have these big goals, you obviously want to maximize your return on time. And so you're reverse engineering, what you need to accomplish to match what's on your vision board and on your goals. And that's the thing is, you could track everything to figure out how many calls or, touches you need to get a transaction done. And once you figure that out, it's a lot easier, to project if you can even meet those goals
Yep,
or if you have to
exactly.
adjust them. And so we have obviously tools for that. I mean, the greatness tracker is something that, I've not been consistent with, but I have it. But basically tracking, everything you're doing. I think that you really have to go deep on something that you get really good at, maybe even a second thing, and then you can sprinkle in some of the extra stuff.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's pretty much all in on Sphere, database, my circles, and then sprinkle in some expired and canceled here and there. And then whatever I get from encounters, with people out there, sign calls, open houses, whatever. But when people ask like about the social media and stuff, I mean, you could talk to agents that are just absolutely killing it in all these different things. Like we know people that kill it on expired and canceled. We know door knocking people. So it's like it's not that it can't be done or done at a decent rate, but we're all on different journeys with different goals. So, I mean, to get to the goals I want to, achieve, like I know I'm not going to do it door knocking and I'm definitely not going to do
Yep.
it cold calling.
Yep.
Like just not gonna happen. I mean, it'd be 24/7, 365 to even come close.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's important that once you kind of have your baseline things that you do, then if you want to sprinkle in a little something extra and block out some time for that. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. I'm gonna put in my hour to 2 hours a day or whatever the amount of time is. But then, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm gonna spend an hour doing this other thing. But then, as far as like what you're saying with your social media, or if it's someone that's doing YouTube or whatever, being consistent. Like, look at our podcast. Like, we've been very consistent with our podcast of getting it out every week. I
Yep.
mean, I'm going to give you more credit than me for just making sure it's out every Thursday now. Is that correct? But
Wednesday, Thursday, but yeah, out every week.
yeah,
No, I mean well, thank you for that. I mean, but I mean, you're helping a lot in terms of just driving our audience and driving like the marketing, and so it's absolutely, I think, a partnership between us.
oh,
But you're
totally.
right. It's the power of kind of consistent action,
Right.
and I think sometimes, the one thing I've realized through doing social media, through doing YouTube, is, you know, and this is kind of where I feel like, having that long-term vision of really what you want to aspire to is important, because with some of these long-term strategic plays, you're not always going to see the return right away, right? And sometimes it's just like, oh man, like why am I still grinding away? Why am I still doing this? Why am I still doing this, right? Because you don't see that return. And but it's if you know kind of long term what you're working towards, like that's actually one way to drive the daily habits, because there is something positive that you're working towards. You may not see it right away, but there's at least a something to kind of jog the positive feelings inside your brain to kind of associate with, okay, the actions I'm taking today is leading me to that future goal.
And like I was mentioning to an agent today, is that there's going to be times along that journey where you're not seeing the results, but you got to the process.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
Yep.
So, like, if you've already figured out your goals and you're already doing what you need to do to get there and you're tracking it, then even when you're not seeing the fruits of your labor, you're going to get there because you've already figured it out. So
Yep.
just trust the process.
Yep. And I also like what you said about just, don't I'm going to use a fishing reference. Don't cast your net too far and too wide, right? Focus. Is that the right fishing expression? I'm not a fisher.
Well,
You know more than I do.
sometimes we talk about casting a wide net,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're more targeted, right? So
Yeah.
we're like hook and line, right?
Yeah.
It depends on what we're fishing for, and like basically when we talk about casting the wide net, it's that you're gonna catch a lot of different things, right? And sometimes even the occasional like sea lion or shark or something, which you don't want to catch, but
No, you don't.
that's what I'm saying. So talk about cast a wide net. A lot of times it's for newer agents, right? Building, but go ahead, carry on.
Well, no, and I think that's the point I want to hit at, is like, if you're kind of brand new to this, or if you're really struggling to figure out like what your direction is, cast a wide net, but be ready to learn from that quickly, figure out very quickly and reflect quickly on what exactly is working for you, what's not working for you, and narrow it down as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And then start focusing in on the things that one, you find really a lot of enjoyment in, that matches who your personality is, but also allows you to go after your goals. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, to your point at the beginning, you're not going to want to stick with it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too about that with the casting the wide net, and I was talking to another agent a couple months ago who was very specific about who they thought they wanted to be in real estate. Well, I want to help buyers doing this, and I was like, you know what, cast the wide net. Work on what comes in, get a taste. Get some experience. You may be surprised. You might not like what you think you're going to like, or you might not be good at what you think you're going to be good at. Then when you find what you do like and what you're taking in stride and doing a good job with, then still be open to helping other clients, but target that.
Mm-hmm.
Then be super targeted.
Yep.
And that'll definitely get you on your way to your goals a lot faster if you can, control more of what the result's going to be. And then, of course, it's part of controlling the controllables, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
there's obviously things you can't control, but if you're consistent in your actions on the things you can control, then you just have to keep that positive mindset and believe that it's all going to work out and you're going to get your result.
Right. Right. And I think, you've been asked this question before of like, hey, what's the best system in terms of production? And I would say there is no best system for everyone. There's no one system fits all for
No,
everyone. Right.
no.
We were talking with an agent earlier this week, and, you used a amazing dance
Oh,
phrase.
dance
Can
to
you
the
share
music
with?
played.
Yep. Yep.
When I was early in college, I worked in mattress retail, one of my part-time jobs in college. So, it's interesting because I still remember to this day that sales training course. One of the things that always stuck with me is dance to the music played. Know your audience, know your client, I mean, and on many levels, like what are their interests, what do they do? But then also personality, right? Like you talk about how you're introverted. I'm obviously very extroverted. It's like the approach, like the approach, because sometimes it's like, you're not understanding each other. You're speaking a certain way, you go in a certain direction, and the client's like, huh?
Yeah.
So it's dancing to the music played in every way.
Yep. Yep.
So you're
Because
not a
like
dancer. Is that why I am losing you on that?
no, well, I am not a dancer, but I had a wedding this past weekend where Anna and I closed down the dance floor. I was actually very proud of
I knew
myself.
that was going to come
And,
up.
Anna was
I'm
very
impressed.
proud of me too. But hey, yeah, definitely not a dancer.
And so I mean that just it's kind of a generalization, but that that reference to dancing, but that's yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, because I grew up playing violin. It's like if I'm like, and I just think about it, like if I'm listening to music, am I listening to classical music? If I try to dance, I'm not going to be dancing I'm not going to be dancing hip hop, right, to classical music. It just doesn't make sense and it doesn't
Right.
work, right? And it's the same idea when you go to real estate. And we were talking about this with our agent the other day. Is like, you're in kind of a more local, small, tight knit community over kind of in the Santa Cruz Aptos area. I'm in kind of the big Silicon Valley, like tech scene Bay Area, where people are on social media. Like the things that I might do to market myself are not necessarily going to have the same effect down over in the Aptos Santa Cruz area. Right. And so it's a matter of, not just understanding like what works for you, but also like who is your demographic, what is your environment, what's your neighborhood like, who are the people you're really targeting, understand your market, right?
Totally. Well, yeah, and how to basically how to connect with your
Mm-hmm.
market, and
Yep.
we talked about that, like, just the demographics, like, are you dealing with elderly people that maybe are not on social media?
Yep.
Maybe they're reading the local paper. Maybe they like
Yep.
to receive something in the mail.
Yep.
Maybe they still have a landline, maybe like to have a nice conversation. Like, just be sure that you're, if you're going targeting a certain kind of business or certain properties or something specific that you want to do, just make sure you know your audience. So
Yep.
that's definitely another facet of dancing to the music played for sure.
Yep, exactly. So I mean, we've talked a little bit about kind of just how to lock in your goals and start doing the things that you need to do. I mean, let's talk a little tactically about, like when it comes to habits, we all have good habits, we all have bad habits. What are some things that have worked for you in terms of like overcoming your bad habits and then developing good habits?
Well, I think some of those are still under construction.
Oh, that's fine.
Um,
That's fine. I mean, none of us are perfect, right? We're always going to face this, but like, what are some things that have worked for you?
I think that so just like when I talk to people about like prospecting and strategy and everything, I always talk about how there's stuff that I've come up with that I've kind of created, and then all the different coaches and gurus, or just ideas, even from colleagues, right? Like I've taken a little bit of different things to put together what works for me. Um, I think that one thing that's hard for me specifically is staying focused and being efficient. I set up time blocks. I don't always honor the time blocks. Believe it or not, being successful, being an icon agent, like none of us are perfect.
Yep.
There's more to be done. So I think for me, um, I think it can be overwhelming when there's too many tasks to do.
Yep.
So lately, I've started targeting. In fact, our buddy Louie, actually, with his time management, kind of just a light bulb went off when he's like, dude, I just put down 5 tasks I want to accomplish. I knocked those out. So I think that something that's broken that overwhelm habit. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my overwhelmed moments, but now when I think about that strategy, I pick basically 5 really important things I need to knock out today, and I just focus on getting through that. And then when I'm in a blocked period to do a certain activity, I eliminate distractions. I silence the phones and notifications. Nobody's going to die for 30, 45 minutes.
Yep.
And I, try to get after what I need to get done. I mean, I know earlier you said this about something else, but like, I force myself to complete certain things before I can do something else. Be like, okay, I'm not leaving this computer, or I'm not getting off this page, or I'm not, getting off this email draft until I'm done.
Yep.
Then I go on to the next thing. But I mean, it's easier said than done. It has helped me, and I've improved a lot. But I mean, a lot of us bring our own issues to the table. Like I have a hard time being super focused. And, I mean, the thing is, you can't really knock yourself for it, because obviously that personality, that energy is what also brings you success, and why people, really connect with you. So it's kind of like you got to kind of take the good with the bad, right? So it's like they say, like, top salespeople are not good managers, right? It's tough to be good at sales and be, typically top salespeople fly by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
They're not going to be those organized engineers on the back end. You know what I mean? Like you're superhuman if you can be an engineer and this just off the charts salesperson. That's
Yeah.
like superhuman. I'm not saying it can't happen, but that's like taking two very opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess knowing your personality and trying to manage like the good habits you have, trying to be better, the bad habits you have, trying to take small steps to get better, not overnight, because that's overwhelming to be like, no, I got to completely change this. It's overwhelming. And I've talked to you about this before with my personality. It's like go big or go home. You always want instant gratification. That's why I've mentioned books before
Yep.
that have changed my life. Like Chop Wood, Carry Water, Pound the Stone, The Compound Effect. I mean, there's just a few of those books that it's like, you know, piece at a time, just a little bit of progress each day. That made a huge difference for someone with my personality. So, obviously your challenges and it's different for you, you know?
No, it is, and it's funny when you describe the engineer plus the salesman. I'm like, I guess that's why you and I make a wonderful business partnership, because I think people that have listened to this podcast long enough by now should know who's the salesman and who's the organized engineer. And neither of us are as great on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that it can happen but I think that it's important to this whole collaboration of talents is a lot more effective, right?
Yeah.
Like you could do more, there's more power in two than there is in one. I mean, I think that's why this whole team effort, this whole collaboration works so well, right? Because then you basically, like, if you look at everybody in our team, they all have different strengths, and it makes you, like, that's how you become superhuman, like Superman, or get the all-star team is you take people that shine at different things and then you all work together.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Now, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming this on your podcast platform, if you could do us a favor, leave a comment down below and let us know where you're listening or watching the show from today. It greatly helps with the algorithm and helps us get reach out to more people who need or want to hear what we have to say. We greatly appreciate it. And now back to the show. Well, and I want to hit on a couple of things just that you talked about, just in a little bit more detail. Like I mean, shout out again to our buddy Louis Galt. He kind of came and talked to our like real estate team about time management. But I mean, it's actually incredibly great advice that he talked about. Like number one is, you only have so much time in a day. Don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do everything on your to-do list. Prioritize your top 5, get those done, feel good about it, and then let everything else wait until the next day. And he kind of talked to us about, well, how do you kind of get to that point, right? And you get to that point really by, like, it's taking an inventory of what your current state looks like. What are you doing today? Like, like, just as an example, like everything we did today, everything I did today, write it down, including like, how long it took me to drive somewhere, to drive to a client site, right? How much time did I spend in front of my computer reading the news? How much time did I spend watching TV? Literally, for any given day, write out all the tasks that you've done and then rank stack them, right? According to like how urgent it is in terms of, the priority, and also how important it is to meeting your goals, right? And then you can actually, like, it's hard to explain, but you can imagine kind of a 4 quadrant graph, right? And as you're prioritizing these tasks that you're doing in those 4 quadrants, you have urgency and you have importance, right? And you can kind of start seeing like, okay, what are the things that I'm doing that are high in urgency, but also high in importance? And those are probably the things that you want to prioritize doing right away, right? Now, there might be other things that you do that might be super important, but not as urgent. Well, great. Like those are probably like, the long-term strategic items that you should keep an eye on, but you don't necessarily have to get them done like right now, here today, maybe within the course of a week. And to make it more real, like I would say, if you're talking about real estate production, right? Hitting my personal sphere, urgent and important. It's going to lead to listings, probably sooner than anything else I do. So let me do that today. Make sure I follow up with at least 5 clients, right? But doing a community tour or a house tour, it's important to my business, but it may not bring me anything urgently in the next like week or two. So let me try to get to that within like the next, couple of weeks or like the month, to make sure I'm still doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are tasks that are probably urgent, but not necessarily super important to you. Like maybe you have to go to the grocery store and buy groceries or something. It's not like, I mean, you have to do it at some point, but maybe that's something that's not worth your time necessarily. So delegate it to somebody, or, nowadays you have DoorDash, you have
Instacart is
Instacart.
who
Exactly.
that's who grocery shopping is
Oh yeah,
delegated to.
Instacart. Exactly. Yeah. So like leverage these services to get those tasks done, but aren't necessarily like worth your time because you have more important things to focus on.
Right.
And then there's, the category, or why I would, lump in my occasional Netflix binges that I do, which are, the not urgent and not very important to my business, and
You
those are
finally
probably
figured
things
that out.
yeah, it took me a while, but I finally figured it out. But those are probably the things, hey, it's relaxing, but maybe I can cut back on, and it's actually it's not a new approach to anything, right? But it's something that not a lot of people think about, and not a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just take the time to do that exercise, you'll be surprised, I think, like how many things you maybe thought you had to do right away, you actually don't have to do right away, or you can delegate. And I think that's actually a great way to kind of help you prioritize that.
Yeah, I totally I agree with you. I mean, I've even been guilty of binging a little Netflix here and there. Um, but I think that for me, like going back to what your strengths and weaknesses are, like sometimes because of focus or if you have a lot on your mind. Obviously, the last year, I mean, you and I are close. I mean, there's been some kind of some rough things that have happened the last year, and it's like, I mean, I think for me, sometimes you get caught up in those moments where maybe you were checking on one of your ads on social media, then all of a sudden you catch yourself just distracted, just scrolling through stuff, going down the rabbit hole, or you're checking on YouTube one of your posts, and then all of a sudden you're going down the YouTube, like,
Yeah.
just rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I think having awareness of, when it's time to work and you have your tasks. I think that instead of this, because for me, I feel like I distract myself if I feel a little overwhelmed or just have too much going on. I think that, one thing you mentioned earlier that and I got to remember this, even with our podcast when we had Mike on, um, you got to remember your why.
Yeah.
And like your why should pull your head out of your ass instead of being distracted. And I think that I got to do a better job with that even now, because I find myself getting distracted at times. And that's just, it's not good for business, it's not good for me, my time. Then it takes you more time to get things done. You have less time to yourself, less time to unwind. Maybe you're not getting in as many workouts, because like you work out in the morning, but sometimes, like, heck, if you can get an hour to go hit some balls or go jump in the sauna, like, I mean, or maybe you want to go for a walk to the beach or spend more time with family or your girlfriend or whatever. It's like, just remember your why, and then don't get sucked into wasting time.
Yep.
Like, just give yourself some grace. I mean, maybe sometimes you need to get up for 5 minutes and just go for a quick walk, just regain your focus. I think that's a bad habit that I fall into sometimes, is I get distracted. And I mean, you mentioned Netflix, and that's what reminded me that, during the day it's not Netflix, but it could be social media, it could be YouTube.
Yeah.
Heck, even the news stuff that pops on. I don't really watch much of news or anything, but like now it's football season, my favorite time of year. I'll get a new notification from ESPN, about fantasy football or something. It's like,
Yeah.
then I go down that rabbit hole, right? It's like,
Yeah.
here was a notification about this guy. Then all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're getting excited about your lineup for next weekend. It's like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm playing my brother this weekend. Let me make sure I got my waiver wire set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, those are, I gotta be better about that. And I don't know, maybe I'm one of the few that's, like a little kid still, like easily gets distracted. You're probably a lot more focused than I am, because I feel like you're a lot more efficient, but then you're probably deficient in other areas. So
Boy, that comment could be interpreted in so many different ways that we won't get into.
oh no, I'm just saying, like, I mean, you're not gonna sit here and say you're perfect, right? I
No,
mean,
absolutely not.
but what I'm
Absolutely
saying
not.
though is, like, I feel like where I really struggle, I think a lot of it has to do with like my personality type and being an extrovert and what I do. So I feel like your struggles with your personality and who you are going to show up in a different way. And so then you got to figure out how to remedy that so that you can continue to be the most productive, and you can remember, what your why is or what keeps you working in the right direction. Because
Yeah.
even though, like, we love what we do, we can have moments where we lose focus, or moments where just the greater impact of major life events can kind of derail you a little bit, you know?
No,
'Cause-
absolutely. Like I think for me, like and this is kind of what I brought up, is one thing I struggle with is sometimes, like, which is why I'm making it a point of trying to like really revamp, like, and like be consistent with like my vision boarding and just having that physical reminder in front of me. Because I think sometimes for me, and maybe this is the engineering me, I get really bogged down into the details, right? I get bogged down into the,
Imagine that.
I know, right? I get bogged down in, I think in the immediate like thing that I'm working on. And sometimes if I don't see a return right away, like it's frustrating for me. And so I think sometimes I have to remind myself, and I suck at this, but I sometimes have to like catch myself, or I'll vent to you, or I'll vent to somebody else and I feel better about it. But then like it also like I think venting or like taking a pause helps me to take a step back and think about, okay, like really what's important to me and what am I working towards, and reminding myself that like I'm not going to see, you know, like with social media, I'm not going to see like the immediate return right away, but I'm building towards something.
But
And it
don't
just needs
don't you
to
feel like
mature.
for you too, it's like trying to make it too perfect? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I feel
it
like you're getting
absolutely is.
better about like just letting it go now, but I feel like with your personality, it's got to be perfect.
Oh, absolutely. And we've talked about this. Like, this is why it took me freaking 3 years to get in front of the camera, even though I have an amazing like studio setup and everything, is because I'm just like, I literally, I wish I had recorded this, but it was one of those things where it's like, I try to do literally one freaking video and it's probably less than like 10 minutes. And I'm just stuck because I'm like, I don't like what I just said. I have to record the whole thing over again, and I just have to keep doing over and over until I finally get it right. And before I know it, like the whole day's over and I haven't gotten it right. And I get frustrated and I'm like, shit, I'll come back to this. And that's just been a major like mental hurdle that I've had to overcome, is just being okay not being perfect with a lot of this stuff. And just getting it done is better than not doing it at all.
So I'm a perfectionist, but I think that, I'm a perfectionist as well, but I think that, obviously that's what held me back with video and everything. Look at all the years I've been in the business. Like, and I know that for that, but it's interesting because where my perfectionism helps is in details, right? Like in selling homes, in how we're presenting homes, in how we're marketing homes, and like just like spelling and grammar and just like
Yeah.
presentation. Like
Yeah.
I can be a little over the top there, but it, it shows like our level that we're at and what we put out, and it shows that we care, and it's like I think in some areas it's good to be like that, but where you and I both struggle is with like on this video or this
Yeah.
post or
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, surprisingly enough, like the podcasts have been the easiest thing we do. Like they're not really even edited, like because we just roll. Like
We
I
just roll.
mean,
Yeah.
we just roll. Like it's always one take. There's no going back. It's we've found like what works for us. You know, because you remember those days when you were even trying to help me hold a stupid phone in front of me, trying to record something. Or
Oh God, that was painful.
holy shit, man! Like 3 hours to try to get like a 40-second clip. For God's sakes,
Yeah.
So it's I think that to remedy what we need perfection. I think that we've been learning ways to be effective. And I think a lot of it's trial and error. And I think we're going to continue to have trial and error, just like in everything else. I've been here now with under this brokerage for three, a little over 3 years. And it's interesting because we've tried doing different things, and how we structure a production team, not a production team, mentor,
Yep.
or agent growth. Are we focusing on luxury? Like it's just kind of trying to find that stride, trying to find that balance. And there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, at the end of the day, like obviously we're good at the real estate, we're good at what we do, but then wanting to kind of level up and trying to find the best way to level up while keeping a balance, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
you can't be the master of all, right? Because it's like they talk about jack of all trades, master of none. Like we really are trying to be masters and wanting to expand being masters, but it's just keeping it more focused, but taking the risk to try and fail to get to a point where we have our chosen path. And I think we just need to keep doing that. Obviously, we finally had a breakthrough in how we connect with audience, right? Like obviously the podcast has been incredible, and dial back a year and we're struggling. Like, okay, well, we need to get out there, we need to engage, we need to connect. We just couldn't figure it out. Now we did, right? So I feel like these other pieces that we want to add to the puzzle, I think that they're gonna come in. They're gonna gel as well because we're willing to take the risk and we're willing to try it out. And if we fail, we find a different way. And
Yeah.
so I'm just glad that we're relentless in our pursuit of perfection. It's never going to be true perfection, but pretty damn good. you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it highlights it highlights how important it is just to get started, to just take one step at a time, because you take one step, it's a lot easier to build momentum taking that next step
Yeah.
versus trying to build momentum from a standstill, right? And it's like, we talk about, you mentioned like one of the books that you've recommended in the past. Like, I think a great book for potentially looking at how to build better habits is, I mean, you and I both know the book. It's Atomic Habits by James Clear. And a couple of things that he kind of mentions in the book that I find, that I found really helpful is, he was talking about how our habits formed, right? And he kind of talks about the four things that it takes to form a habit. He talks about, habits is formed when you have a cue, like give yourself an easy trigger that's going to force you to act. Like for us, as an example, like doing this podcast, like we have time set aside like twice a week on our calendars. We're not moving it. It forces us, it's a visual trigger for us to say, hey, we're taking this time to do the podcast, right? um, if you want to learn like an instrument, like don't hide your instrument in the closet. That's the example he used in the book, right? Put your guitar somewhere in the middle of the room that you're going to trip over or you're going to see anytime you come down, as a visual reminder that, hey, I have a goal to learn the guitar. And that's kind of the first step, right? Then he talks about like, okay, you have to form a right habit, you have to have a craving, a desire that you want to achieve. And we've talked about this in this podcast episode. Like, what's your end goal? What are your vision? What's important to you? What are you trying to accomplish by performing this habit, right? And then he talks about then the end results of having some type of response. The action of doing the habit, what kind of response does it elicit in you? And usually it's, for you and I, as we're doing this podcast, or if we get, for me, like, or both of us, if we get a workout done, we feel really good, right?
Mhm.
It's a
Yep.
positive response, and and then the final part of it is the reward. It's that positive feeling after having completed the action. Or for us in this podcast, like you've shared in past episodes, like we don't know who's watching, but we know people are watching and listening, and on the occasion, like we get that positive feedback from from people that have been listening, like, hey, like it's so inspiring. Like you've shared on this, it's like people have approached you and said, hey, it's so inspiring, like what you've shared in terms of your battle with cancer, everything that you've had to overcome, right? And just being getting that, not that we like feed off of that, but it's always nice to kind of sometimes be reminded that, hey, like this is having a positive impact on somebody out there, we just don't know who. And that
Right.
positive reinforcement mechanism drives the habit that you're trying to build home.
Well, and I'm glad you shared that too, because I mean, that's obviously, good book. There's some good strategies. What was interesting is that, a fellow agent that knows my business structure recommended the pumpkin plan.
Hmm.
And so I read that, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now, even though I was reading it last year,
Yeah.
finally putting it in action. And I mean, I know that you haven't dug in, so we could always recap that. But, essentially building to your strengths, nurturing, having the clients and the people in your organization that you connect with, that you can grow with.
Okay.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Weeding out the toxic, weeding out the bad, like just really playing to your strengths
Mhm.
and building to your strengths and weeding out everything that doesn't serve you and people that don't serve you.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I'm sure that someone else might get something a little different from it, right? Because we all come from a different place when we
Mhm.
read a lot of these books. I mean, they'll speak to you differently, but when you have a chance, you have to read that, and then maybe we
I will.
can
I do. Yeah.
come on and recap that. But you'll laugh when you read it because you'll be like, "Holy shit, that's Shane!" It's like, yeah, I wish I had the book like 3 years ago, right? So, but
But I mean, just even how you described it just now, like it makes a lot of sense, because I feel like, especially in this day and age, just there's so many things that pull at us, right? That pull at our attention.
we always talk about shiny objects,
Yeah, and there's always something that's shiny that's going to be
right?
like, that's going to elicit that, like, ooh, I want a right away reaction, right? With the shiny,
Right, right,
like in the short term gratification, right?
right.
But it's like, I mean, you look at the most successful people, and nobody. I mean, I would say a common theme with them is no one gravitated towards that shiny object. They put in the blood, sweat, and tears. You just don't see it. You see where they are now, but you didn't see what they had to go through. And I
Yeah.
think part of what we want to highlight with this podcast is to pull back that veil, whether it's with our own business and our own like development, or with some of the top producing people in their industries out there, because you'll notice once you start pulling back the curtain, a lot of these common themes, very focused, know like they have the right habits that they've developed over time. They know what they're going after, they know what they're working after, right? And they're just they've put in the blood, sweat, and tears to be able to get there.
No, it's true, and I mean honestly, like it's you know, I guess it can be daunting sometimes. It can be frustrating. It can be a journey where you want to quit. Some people do quit for a minute, or you question yourself, and um, it takes a lot of mental strength,
Yeah.
and that's why the goals are important, and especially the why.
Yep.
And then you just gotta be like relentless.
Yep.
You
Yep.
got to be like for 1 year, because every year I kind of come up with a quote for the year. And 1 year, and I don't remember the exact quote now, it's been a while, but it had the word savage in it,
Okay.
like had to be like a savage. But I mean, like there's a lot of, I mean, rigorous, savage. I mean, there's a lot of different adjectives you can use, but it takes, anybody can get there, but the thing is that very few people are willing to put in the kind of commitment and the kind of effort it takes. And I mean, I don't know, just the struggles and what I've gone through and where I've gotten in life. It's, you look back and it's always been so worth it. Um, it's funny because, here's a bad analogy. Like, I hate roller coasters for the most part.
Hey, me too.
And I've
Yep.
gone on some that, like I really didn't want to go, but I got pushed to go. And then when I actually went, when I got off, my heart was still racing and I was probably, I don't know, fucking half delusional. But dude, I get off and I'm like, holy shit, that was fucking awesome. Like,
Yeah.
so weird, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like at times, and like I said, it's probably a bad analogy, but I kind of feel like at times, especially when you're not seeing the results, right? There's especially in our business, because a lot of things take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes over a year to bear fruit, right? Some of the things we're doing. And you just you have to remember, aside from your why, what it's like when you get there. And that could be some additional inspiration.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes you'll be surprised. And for me, like, getting off some of these rides, I was like, holy shit, so
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I know we got to wrap up, but I just wanted to share that.
No, I mean it is no, I appreciate you for sharing that, because it is sometimes it's like you do something and you go into it thinking, oh, I don't know about this, but then you come out of it like, oh, how great was that?
Totally, dude. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like I can't believe that hit me when I was saying that. That's so perfect.
Yeah, it's funny when you said that. It reminded me of when I went skydiving, but that's a story for another day, because
Oh,
I have a fear
geez.
of heights. But then after I came out of that, I was like, shit, when's the next plane? Sign me up.
Yeah, the intelligence meter just dropped on you, man. Jumping
Well,
out of a good plane. Jeez.
Well, it's interesting because I really I'll wrap up my end with this. Like, I really appreciate kind of what you're saying about, you kind of go into a year with a quote, like, and that actually just got me thinking, like, I don't like I guess I didn't have a quote this year, but if I were to like reflect back on this year and kind of my approach and how I've come along in my development, I was looking up the word just to make sure like it's actually grammatically correct, but I would say actually for me, my theme for this year has been, if I were to think of a quote for myself, it would be, I am being unabashedly myself.
That's so fitting because I've
Right?
known you for a while, and yeah, you found yourself and you have a personality and you can actually
I
talk
know.
in front of the
I'm a
camera now.
robotic engineer.
Yeah, no, it's impressive. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that.
But no, I appreciate you, because I think I appreciate you for like reflecting on that, because actually it caused me to kind of think about it a little bit too. And I was like, I guess that would be my theme for this year.
It could be your fight song. It could be your
Yeah.
mission statement. It
Yeah.
could be your like, yeah. I mean, I think that it's important to have something along those lines. But yeah, I guess, well, to recap, I mean, we actually went quite elaborate on this topic,
We did.
but no, I think that just, you know looking back on this episode, obviously, everybody's going to have a different approach. Um, you know, consistency, that's something that you really have to be consistent. Time management, return on investment of time,
Yep.
passion, commitment,
Yep.
being relentless.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, that's everything we talked about. I mean, these are kind of the keywords, at least on my side. What did you gather?
Well, I think it's very similar. I think it's, understand, what it is you're going after, what's important to you, right? Lay out the steps for how you want to get there, right? And then, be laser focused on the things that you have to do to get there, and do the work that you need to figure out what's important and what's not, and prioritize accordingly. And there's plenty of books, there's plenty of resources out there, right? It's not a one size fits all for anyone, but figure out where your strengths are, how you best do what you need to do, and just go after it.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. Well, it's been good.
This has been a fun one, and I appreciate our listener who brought this topic up, because I thoroughly enjoy talking about this. And I hope that's encouragement for others that are out there listening. If there's something you kind of find yourself thinking about and you want to kind of hear more about it, just reach out and let us know.
Yeah. Shout out to JJ.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. See
Yep.
you next
And
time.
yep, we will catch you on the next episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast.